Hello and welcome to this video, a short video on how to create a WPF or Windows Presentation Format application. Now what caused this whole thing to come about is I was in surgery and got out of surgery and had 2 days on my hands, and our sales folks were saying, hey, one of the offerings that I'm responsible for was too difficult to price, and it was just too time consuming with everything else they have to create a proposal for the offering. So what I did was said, all right, why don't I make it to where you enter a little bit of data and you automatically have a proposal come out, and it's just wham there. And I thought to myself, well, hey, at least I'm taking the excuse away if I do that. So I started off doing what's called a model view controller application. And I was like, yeah, go create a model view application, put it on the web, and then they'll be able to download it. I was thinking to myself, well, Phil, that's great, but you work for a Fortune 100 company. They're probably not going to let you host an application on their servers. So I was like, okay, well, boss probably won't let me go to Azure and pay to host something on their servers. So I was like, all right, well, maybe the web app idea probably won't work. So I got to thinking. I looked at Windows at the Windows forums, and I was like, wow, this stuff looks like from the old Windows 95 days. And I'm sure it's probably just I didn't know what I was doing with Windows forms, and I'm sure folks who do it all the time can make it look really good. But then I got, all right, those two aren't going to work. So I said, all right, well, why don't we try WPF? Now, for those of you who have never worked with WPF, essentially it's, I guess, comparable to Java Swing, their UI component. So what you're looking at here, I downloaded Visual Studio Community 2015. I've got Windows, WPF application, and WPF is actually really simple. So what it does is it uses what's called YAML. It's basically markup language. It's XML, but it's application XML. And you'll see real quick, it's actually fairly easy to build. So we're going to call this demo application. And what we're going to do, I'm going to go and put this on my GitHub so that you can download it, mess with the source code. The initial applications can be extremely basic, and then in a follow-up video, I'm actually going to tie this into the BACnet IP library I got and pull BACnet data into it. For those of you who are in the building automation space, I'm going to basically teach you how to build your own graphical interface for a BAS system. And we'll see how it goes. Okay, so WPF application, demo application, right here under Windows. Don't gotta do really anything else. Click OK. And the project's gonna load. And voila, we've got main window. So first thing we're gonna do, we're gonna change the title and call this demo application. So if you look here, all right, I'm going to close this off so we can get a little bit better view here. Drag this up. Come on, work with me, sucker. All right, so you've got your class. Now this class right here, this is going to be in our C# code. When we're doing our functions, we're going to be calling against this class. I typically just use this because I'm lazy, but you could go and type out the class name. If you were to have multiple windows, that's where you would probably do that. All right, right now we've got a grid layout. Now, grid is one of many layouts that you'll see right here. So this is called document outline. If you don't have it snapped on, then you just go to view, right? View and then document outline, and you're going to add it on there. All right, but anyways, we've got it on here. Now, grid really isn't going to be what I need, so I'm going to change the layout type to stack panel. Stack panel is going to be nice because it's going to stack everything either horizontally or vertically. So you can see, right, I changed stack panel now. So this is, it can either be a tag that goes and self-closes, or in our case, We're going to have it like this. We're not going to let it self-close. That way I can put some code in between it, right? So we've got this, we've got stack panel, and a couple different things you could do here. You can give it a name, so X. Any of you who are familiar with XML will realize the name property right there. So we're going to call this stack panel 1. Yeah, that's super neat name. Alright, so there's a couple different things I could do here. I can go and I can add stuff manually via document outline. Or I guess automatically via document outline. It's great when you're doing a video and you're on pain pills recovering from surgery, because you don't make as much sense. So, alright, stack panel, and then, or I can do right here, I can just add my label, right? And I can add my text box. Now, what we're also going to do here is we're going to go above the stack panel. We're going to add what's called a tab control. Okay? So under the tab control, I'm going to cut all this code in here. Put it in here. And I'm going to add a tab item. I'm going to cut the code again. Okay. So what do we do here? Alright, so we're going to talk through. Oh, let me grab my text box, close it off. There we go. Alright, so what we did here was I created a tab control. Now, tab control, tab item's not going to be really making sense here until we add a name property here. We're going to call this tab financial data. Okay? We're going to call this financial stack panel. Okay? And we're going to go here. We're going to give this, if you want to give it a name, we call it content. Right? So here's our content. We're going to call this let's see if I can spell here on the fly. Financial data. Alright. So right off the bat, we've got stack panel, we've got a label, text box, stack panel, tab item, tab control. We're going to add a couple of these. Now, if you get invalid markup, don't worry. All that means is that you just haven't completed. See, content is set more than once. That's fine. We're going to deal with that, so don't worry about it. So continuing, something I just realized real quick. I was like, why is it saying there's content? I meant to put header. So there we go. Header, financial data. Not content. Content's all this stuff in here. So that's why it was giving us issues. So we're going to add a couple tab controls here. So we add our tab item. And so I did it this way. I could also just go and say, all right, I want to go to my toolbox. I want to go to my WPF controls. I want to grab my tab item. Right, so tab control, drag it on here, drag tab item. If you don't see that on here and you're like, what the heck, where's this stuff at? Well, then you can go right here to properties. Let's get properties. So just to save you the time of this loading, all I did was I just clicked on here and I clicked add item. I'll show you that in a second. It takes us about 30 seconds to load. So whatever you want that's not on here, you just go and you add the actual item you want. So if we were sitting here and we're like, okay, we want tab item. Tab item isn't on here right now. And just click tab item, click OK. Now you notice tab item's on here. So choose items, add the item. It'll take about 30 seconds to load, so don't get too impatient. It's not a big deal. Alright, so we can drag and drop, or we can add. Like I said, we give it a name. In this case, we're going to call this customer data. We're going to give it the header, which is going to be surprising, customer data. Alright. So there we go. So we've got a tab item. We can be really lazy here. We can just copy our stack panel. We can call this customer data. But we can't call it the exact same thing as the tab item. So what do we call it? Customer data stack panel. All right. So here we go. We've got a label. We've got two labels, right? Right now our label's not saying anything. So there's two ways of doing labels. You can go and you can enter the data right here, and you could say label would be, let's call this widget count, because ultimately what's going to happen is this application is going to look at how many widgets do you have, and then based on those widgets it's going to calculate a price, and it's going to take the customer data and it's going to put that into a Word document. Alright, so it's going to be pretty cool when it's all said and done. Alright, so we've got widget count, and in this text box is going to be where we enter widget count. So I'm going to pause the video and I'm going to create this stuff real quick, and then I'm going to go through it. Alright, so I went and added a bunch of labels and text boxes. I went and added a couple buttons. I added 3 tab items. So let's just go through the changes so far. So we started with a basic window. We changed the window to add a tab control and 3 tab items, as you see right here. The tab items are labeled via the header property, and under each of these tab items we created a stack panel so that we could stack our different items either vertically or horizontally. In this case we can see they're stacked vertically. We went and put a label and a text box for each of the properties that we're going to enter. Now we haven't done any validation yet. All we've done is we've created this label and we've created this text box. We've named our stack panel, and then moving on to the second, done pretty much the same thing. Alright, and then the third one we created, here's our actual action tab. This is where we said create a proposal. I used a separator to kind of add a little bit of distance between the start. Now granted, you'll notice I used the margin property here. I could have simply used the margin property and just set the top, because there's 4 areas you can set margin on. You can set top, left, bottom, right. So I could have simply set the top to be large enough, but rather than do that, I just wanted to demonstrate the separator. So I demonstrated the separator. I use visibility hidden so you don't have a bar going across your screen, and I set it to a height of 20. Now what is this 20? These are pixels, so that you know, if you look at the beginning of your window, it's set to 350 by 525. Well, if we go down here, it's set to 20. So we notice here I set our button width to 100, created a button, called it calculate price, set its alignment to center. Now I set a label, another text box. Now these 2 text boxes I said is read-only true, because what's going to happen is, as a result of the code we're going to write here, this is going to actually go and send the resulting code back to this text box. So alright, so we got to add our code now. There's 2 ways to add code. There's multiple ways to add code, but there's 2 that I primarily work with. So I'm going to show you that in just. Alright, my 8-year-old son just came in here. Say hi, Trevor.
Hi.
And he's watching me record this, so no pressure here. Alright, so as I was saying, we're going to go and add a button, and there's a couple ways we could do this. Quickest way I like to do is go to the actual button right here, right? So we go to our button. See, this is our button. We're going to go to its properties, so we're going to have to open the properties. Alright, properties window. We've got our button set. Click on this lightning bolt, and it's going to give us all of the different events that can be triggered. So quick segue into what events are. When you click an action item like a button, an event happens. And so for example, these are mouse events right here. Drag over, etc. These, like right here, once you've got the focus an example of got focus, I could go and change the color of the button, make it flash, do all sorts of stuff. For this simple application, we're just concerned about click. So what we're going to say is we're going to say calculate price. That is our function that this is going to create. And you notice it created a function. It's saying the object that is being sent, and then it is routing these events to this function right here. Essentially, it's subscribing to the function, creating the event handler, and all I've got to do is add the code now. All right, I'm going to save this real quick, go back, and you notice it added a click right here. So I'm just going to separate it so it's clean. Go to my next button right here. I click on it. Right, so we've got view properties. Now I could pin this so that I don't have to keep going. You saw me just do that with my pin. I can pin it to the side so I don't have to keep going every time I click on here. Now you'll notice if I click on an item, properties is right there. So I click again, I say create proposal. There we go. Alright, so now I have two functions. I've got calculate price and I've got create proposal. Now for calculate price, we're going to say, alright, what do we say here? We said we had widget count, margin percentage, and sales tags. So let's think through how we want to price this. This widget count. Alright, and then we're going to have widget count. We got to turn this to, or convert to, I like to use decimal since we're going to be going and doing financial right here. And we've got to create an object. We're going to call this decimal widget count. And then if I can actually hit the equal key. All right, so you saw how I did this. So brief description. I've instantiated the decimal object called widget count. And I've given it the value where I'm saying this, which this is the current window I'm using. Now, what you could do, sorry, everyone's waking up in the house, so I have to keep pausing the video. Unless you want to hear the family dynamics of the Zito family. All right, so a couple things we can do here. So I've got widget count.text. That's taking the value from this text box. It is a string initially, so we've got to convert it, as you saw me write. Or you can do this dot. Now, the reason you would use this is if you were going and having multiple properties and you wanted to ensure that you got the current one. In this case, we don't have that. So really, just using window count is fine. But by adding this, you can ensure that you get the current property that the system is working with. All right, so decimal widget count equals convert to decimal this dot widget count dot text. All right, so we've got a value. And, we just kind of repeat much of the same. Decimal. All right, we're going to call this, let me remember here, we had margin percent and sales tax. So we're going to call this margin percentage equals convert to decimal this dot, and that was called percentage dot text. All right, and then we do the same thing here. That was called sales tax rate. Can't type this morning. All right. So we've created 3 objects that we can work with now, right? All right, we've got our 3 objects we can work with, and now what are our objects that we're actually going to export to? Well, if we look back here, we've got total sell and total margin. So I go back here. And I say, all right, decimal that total cell. But in this case, I don't want to have the same value as what we're going to be writing to. So we're just going to give it, we're going to instantiate it, give it a value of 0. That's going to give me that green squiggly line saying I haven't used this yet in this function. Total margin volume equals 0. Okay, so right now we've instantiated all our objects. We're just going to add a little note so we don't forget. Instantiating objects for function. So to add your note, you just do // that gives you comments. Okay. So now we've got to do some math. We're going to say, let's do something cool. Let's think this through. So if we say widget count is greater than 100, widgets equal 10 cents. Widget count less than or equal to 100, widget count is going to equal 20 cents. Something very basic. Now you can do this a couple ways. You can do this through a switch, which you can say if widget count is this, case 1, widget count is that, case 2, or you can do this through an if block. Now for simplicity's sake, we're just going to use an if block. We're going to say if widget count, right, is greater than 100. So that creates a Boolean object. It's either true or it's false. And we're going to say widget count, or we're going to actually widget cost. We're going to create a new object up here called widget cost. We're going to say that this is equal to 0.10. Okay, so we got that. All right, now else if, and else if is going to basically continue the else loop, or the if loop. So what's going to happen is an if loop is if, else if, else. It's kind of like try, catch, finally, where you have your 3 scenarios. And you see we've added the else if widget count is less than or equal to 100. Now this can actually be simplified, and we can do it one of 2 ways. We can just go and say else and make this right here. We can just say else widget cost 0.20, or we can take it even a step further and say 0.20 and just set the default value to 0.20. All right, so we see here. Now why does it say it's not being used? Because it's being used right here inside this if, right? See right here, widget cost being used. Now what's going to happen is if I want to actually go and use it again, then I'm going to have to use it outside of here. But as we're going to see in just a second, when I actually run the program, when I set this widget count above 100, it's going to change this value to 0.1. All right. I'm going to add a little bit more code and I'm going to talk through it. All right, so continuing. So we went through decimal, widget count, convert to decimal, got all our objects were taken out of the WPF text boxes, and we're going and converting those to a decimal, doing our margin percentage. We got a double for widget cost, got decimal for cost. I'm just setting in kind of my calculation value instantiating that way we can use it. I could instantiate it right here, but I like to keep it separate in case I want to do something with it. And then right here we've got final objects, so total sell price, total margin volume. These are the ones that we're actually going to write back to those is read-only text boxes that are in the calculation values. Then we've got our if block. If it's greater than 100, widget cost. Otherwise, it defaults to the widget cost. Now, what we could do, since we're only going to have solid numbers here, is we could go and say if it's greater than or equal to 100, or we could go and say if it's greater than or equal to 101. It just depends exactly how accurate we want this to be. If for our simple scenario, this is going to be fine. I'm figuring most of you guys understand Boolean logic and comparators, and you guys can figure out the greater than or less than without me spending time going through it. All right, so we've got our cost. We say widget count times convert to decimal, because when you're going and taking two values and performing math, they've got to be the same type of value. And then both of those values have to be the type of the object that they're writing to. So this is a decimal type, so both of these have to be decimals. All right, so total sell price. Doing a little bit of math here, not too complicated. Let's start off at the back, right? So folks are going to take margin percentage. They're typically going to put in a whole number. We haven't done any validation yet. We haven't gone and done any validation for the form. We haven't done anything. So that'll be done in a later video. This is just a super easy application. So what we've done is we've said margin percentage, which is going to be a whole number, let's say 10%. And then we've timesed it by 0.01, right? So 0.01 is going to give us, for 10, that's going to give us 0.1. We subtract 0.1 from 1, that gives us 0.9, right? Here we're doing pretty much the exact same thing, except for we're adding. So in this case, I'm creating my sales tax. So sales tax is let's say 6%, so it'd be 1.06 times cost. Sales tax always gets applied to cost, at least here in the States. It gets applied to cost prior to sell. And then after you've applied it to cost, then you apply margin. So, okay, we're doing our basic calculation, cost divided by margin, so 0.9. So if we were to do that, we're going to come out with our total sale price. Now, I'm going to double check all my numbers and make sure everything works right. And then we also have our total margin volume, which is sell minus cost. So we're going to I'm going to pause the video and add these real quickly to the text objects, and then we're going to put some data in and run the application. Okay, so went real simply and added two string values, string sell price, string margin price. Now what I did is I took the total sell price right here, took it to a string, and I gave it the currency formatting. So you could just read up on the toString function, and you can read up on the different types of formatting objects you can enter into the toString function. But essentially, in order to pass back to that text value, it has to be in the string format, because that's what that text value accepts. Now, if you try to pass it back here to total sell, you're going to get an error, and it's going to say cannot implicitly convert type string to text box. What's happening here is if you're not writing to the text property, you're actually saying, hey, entire text box, I want to make you a string, and it's not going to work. You have to actually write to the text property. You'll see whenever I hit dot and then I look at here, I've got functions and I've got properties throughout this. Okay, and then we've got events. So you see here, all right, there's some properties. So in our case, we want to go to the text property. Now, obviously, I could just press T and get there a lot easier. But you see right here, here is our property. And you see get or set. You know it's a property because it has the get or set. So essentially, this is the text box class, and under this class there's a property that has a get and set, where get is where you get the value and set is where you set the value. Now you don't have to say get or set. It knows, the application knows when you say equal that you're setting it to. And vice versa, if this was on this side and sale price was on this, then it would know that you are actually getting the value from this and giving it to sale price. Hopefully that makes sense. All right, we're going to run this application real quickly. And if nothing breaks, all right, so widget count, we're going to call this 150. Margin percentage, 20. And the sales tax of 6%. Go over here to create proposal, calculate price. All right, so 1988 is our total sell and our total margin of 488. But how do we know our math is right? Well, that is where we can go and we can do some basic debugging. All right, so what we can do is maybe we start right here. I'm putting what's called a breakpoint in. Start it. Enter my widget count again. What was my widget count? It was 150, I think. 26. Create proposal, calculate price. All right, so the first thing we're going to see, got a widget count of 150. This is greater than that, so it should be true. So if I step into it, widget cost right now is 0.2. As I leave this, widget cost should be set to 1. So yep, okay, so we know our widget cost works. Now some folks do debugging, some folks do print statements where they just have the application print. This isn't a console, so I'm not going to be printing to the console. So in this case, we're just going to walk through debugging. And it's really simple. There's not a lot nested into this, so we should be able to just walk right through this. All right, we see cost isn't calculated yet. I step through it again. Cost is now $15. All right, so our sales tax. So what we should get out of this, if we go to cost, 15 times 1.06, should get 15.9 for this, divided by our margin percentage of 20, so divided by 0.8, should come out with like 19.875 if I did this right. Okay, 19.875. Our cost, 15. Total sell, 19.875. All right, so now total margin volume, 4.875. Sell price hasn't been set yet, you see, right here. And you notice it gave the dollar signal. I was pointing at it with my hand. You can't see that. Dollar signal. All right. Those things are set. Let's step out of the program. And voila. Next, we're going to go through how to create the proposal. I'm going to stop this video and I'm going to start a new video where we go through how to use the docx library and how to create the proposal. All right. Thank you. All right. Welcome back. So if you are watching this video from the beginning, you'll realize that we created a main window called demo application. We created 3 tab items, financial data, customer data, and create proposal, with the intent that we have a event on calculate price that when we click it is going to calculate a price. And now we are going to work on the create proposal. So first things first, getting documents to work is a pain in the butt. I don't know why. It's probably just due to my ineptitude, but working with Word documents is just difficult. And tried using what Microsoft recommends, their OpenXML, and that was, I understand XML, and that was painful. So fortunately, after using my Google Foo powers, was able to find a library that works pretty well. So what we're going to do here is we're going to add that library. So you see right here, manage NuGet packages. So NuGet essentially is, if you're familiar with Java packages or Python libraries, they're all basically the same. This is basically takes libraries that were created by others that you can use and import along with all their dependencies into your application. So in this case, I'm going to type docx, right? And I'm going to install it. So what I want to do here is just click install. Pretty simple. Ooh. It's early in the morning. All right, so right now I've got docx. I'm going to eliminate our breakpoint so we don't stop all the time. All right, so using Nova code, boom. All right, so how do I know it's Nova code? Well, one, I've used this before, so that's the pretty easy way. Also, if you look here under your recent extensions for your projects, and it's not showing up. Since it's not showing up, I'm going to show you the easier way to know that. Go here to my manage NuGet packages, docx, right here. Here's the project URL. So we click here. And essentially it shows us how to go and use this. So I recommend, if you're ever doing something, you download the source code. So in this case, download the source code and it has an example project. And you should never be shameful about going and copying other people's code. As long as, you attribute it to them and you go and make sure that it's freely available and you're not taking something illegally, there's no problem with that. So I notice it's using Nova code. If I go and actually look at the library for it, you'll see that right here, let's go to docx, and I actually go and I open up the docx class. You'll notice the namespace is Nova code. So namespaces are how you access classes. So under this namespace are several different classes, right? We see docx class, it's inheriting a couple different things to the class. All right, we see the docx property. It's also using the same Nova code namespace. So from that, I know that I am going to call the Nova code namespace using Nova code. All right, so we've got to build this sucker out. So there's two ways we can do it. We can try to just hack our way through this. So you say, we're going to do docx, call this equals new docx. But we're going to see real quickly it doesn't contain a constructor, which is just weird. But that's fine. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to go and write out some code that is going to create, essentially we're going to create a file, we're going to pull a file. I'm going to actually just type out everything we're going to do real quick so that you guys can refer to it later. I'm going to create a docx object. Use this object to open template file. Find specific strings in the template file. And replace these strings with objects from the application. Period. Then the application, or then the docx object will save the file as a new file. Fairly easy. I'm going to pause the video, I'm going to write the code, and then we're going to go. Alright, so real quickly what I just did, I just created a sample proposal excuse me, for a template document. What I did was I put in a couple properties in here. Hello, customer first name, customer last name. We appreciate the opportunity to price widget count widgets for you. Your total sell price is sell for the widget count widgets. Not very complicated, but if you understand these basic things, you can extrapolate all of this to be essentially whatever you want it to be. You can add formatting, whatever. So I'm going to walk through the code here. Okay. So the first things I did, I want to be able to call this calculate price, not just when I click on the button, but also whenever this event fires. In order to call this, though, I can't have it be a triggered event. I have to have it be an actual function. So I took the calculate price, all the code that was in here, and I moved it into a function down here. See, it's all right here. It's all exact same code. It's just put in its own little function that can now be called by other functions in this namespace. So we said we're going to create the doc type object. So first what I did was I created a string template. Now, by using the @ symbol here, I eliminate the need to use double forward slashes, because whenever I'm going and using this right here, when I'm not using this, watch what happens. See, now it's saying, hey, there's an unrecognized escape sequence, meaning that in order for this to be proper, I've got to go and make it the proper symbol. Essentially, whenever you're going and writing ASCII code and you want to go, or sorry, Unicode, and you want to go and write certain symbols, you've got to escape those symbols. To save you a bunch of headache, just use that symbol. Now, what I could have done is I could have used folders in my application and then done relative URLs. So just map to this. In this case, we're not going to try to do that. We're just going to keep it super simple, because finding the relative URL for a document is sometimes difficult. All right, so we got demo application, final docs, demo proposal. So I've created over here demo application, final docs. There's nothing in there, right? Template doc, sample proposal. All right, it's all right there. Okay, so we're good. I showed you the sample proposal. Now what I'm doing here is I'm taking the company name value, and you see this right here? I'm essentially, what happens when I put the squiggly bracket and a number in place is this is saying, hey, I want to replace this with an object. So when I use the output file name and I create that, and I use the string.format function, I say, all right, file name template. Here's my template name, right? Okay. Here is that string coming right in here. Company name, this is the name of the company coming from whatever I filled out. And that's going to replace right here. Then I've got the date time now to string function, and I'm formatting it as day, 3-letter month, 4-symbol year. And I'm replacing there. What it's going to do is it is going to create a document at the very end when I do this, all right? Okay. So now I've got docx_letter, as I'm calling it, docx.load. All right, see right here, I accidentally did a double /. I'm creating a date. This would be a date object that I would add. All right, so right here, I've got replace text widget count. Now this replace text function is going to look for this widget count value in my Word document right here, and it is going to replace it with a value here. Same thing with cell, margin, company name, project, etc., etc., etc. All right. Now what I do need to do is I need to go and add the save So if we go and we look at that, right, we're going to say docx create, and here's where we're going to create the file. Okay. Actually, it's not create, it's save as. Yes, that's right. Give me a second here. Save as. Let me look at my other code. I got to remember this real quickly. Save as. I just learned this library yesterday, so here we go. Yeah. I take the object I've created, save as, and I take the output file name that I've created here. And this save as function essentially is going to save all the changes I've made as this output file name. Alright, so now if we run this, everything should work. And we should create a proposal. So widget count of 20, margin percentage of 30, sales tax 6. Company name, let's call this ABC, project site, project 1. Customer name, Bob, Jones. Now you notice, what's going on here? Well, I didn't have the window size properly, so it was cutting off right about here. Now fortunately, I can just drag this down, but I'm going to go and make some final tweaks when I do formatting to actually make it size right. Let's just call this 303 Road, Houston, Texas. Okay, all right. Calculate price, still works. Create proposal. All right. So this is where I got an error. Let's see what it's going on. Cannot access because it's being... Oh, I'm being stupid. Oops. I guess I should have it closed, right? All right, let's try this again. This is how we reload. All right. Hey, it's at least you know it's being done live. All right. 100. Let's do something cool. 20,000. 30% margin. Sales tax 6. Customer ABC site project 1. Bob Jones. Address 303 Street. Houston, Texas 75071. Okay, see? Create proposal. Boom. All right. But you don't see anything. What did it do? Well, if everything worked right... Hey, look at that. Hello, Bob Jones. We appreciate the opportunity to price 20,000 widgets for you. Your total sell price is $3,000 for 20,000 widgets. So obviously I need to add some formatting on the widgets. You know, this one document itself isn't very useful. But what you've seen here is I've just created the ability for you to go and say, hey, I want this application to start, and I want my salespeople or whoever to be able to put in this information, add a little bit of customer data, and then bam, click create proposal, and it creates a proposal. So what you learned in this video series, you learned the basics of WPF. You learned how to work with some basic functions, how to grab objects out of a WPF application. And you learned how to work with the docx library, which shout out to the dude who created that right here. If you want to go and give props to Cathal Coffee, who created the docx library, it's probably the easiest way I've seen to work with documents. I'm going to upload all this code up to my GitHub, and you can access my GitHub. It'll be in the blog link. So essentially, we went through, we created our main window, created our documents, and created our functions. I put a sample document in that directory right there, created a string, change some values around, bam, done. All right, I appreciate you all watching. I'm going to look forward to your comments. I'll answer any of them I can, and if you have any questions on how to do other things. My next video that I'm going to follow up with this is where I'm going to take this concept right here, this Windows concept, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to work with this BACnet IP library that I found off SourceForge, and I'm actually going to go and pull in building automation data from that, and then I'm going to go and show how we can edit that data and see it reflecting in a building automation system in real time. I look forward to seeing your comments, and please make sure you subscribe to the blog at blog.buildingautomationmonthly.com. Send me an invite on LinkedIn, and you can hit me up on my Twitter, Phil Zito, at Twitter, I guess. I should really know my Twitter, but oh well. Thanks. Take care.